Tonight, Australia loses one of its most celebrated Indigenous leaders. Dr. Lowitja O'Donoghue dies aged 91. Also tonight, the federal government prepares to legislate the Stage 3 tax cuts. Australia backs another US-led wave of airstrikes on Houthi targets in Yemen. And summer swelter. Victorians escape the heat as temperatures soar. Good evening, Iskhander, Razak with ABC News. Australia has lost one of its most celebrated Indigenous leaders, with Dr. Lowitja O'Donoghue dying aged 91. The former Australian of the Year spent her life fighting for the rights of First Nations people, spending decades in senior Aboriginal community leadership positions. Dr. O'Donoghue's family has given permission for her name and image to be used.
Even after leaving public life, Dr. Lowitja O'Donoghue continued to pass on her knowledge and fight for reconciliation.
We were stolen, but we need to move on.
Born in remote South Australia to an Aboriginal mother and a pastoralist father, Dr. O'Donoghue and her two elder sisters were taken from her parents when she was just 2. She was trained to be a domestic worker.
I feel angry about the policy that removed us and also took away our culture, took away our language and took away our families.
30 years went by before she saw her mother Lily again.
And what I saw was a woman who had been undone.
Dr. O'Donoghue put her efforts into improving the health of her people, fighting discrimination to become the first Aboriginal nurse in South Australia. She joined the public service and spent her career advocating for Aboriginal rights and welfare, and became the first Australian Aboriginal person to address the UN General Assembly.
That the Australian Constitution be changed to recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the continent's original inhabitants.
We are a nation that knows itself now better than at any time in the past. Is a lot to do with Lowitja O'Donoghue.
But Dr. O'Donoghue can best be described by her family, who said we adored and admired her when we were young and have grown up full of never-ending pride as she became one of the most respected and influential Aboriginal leaders this country has ever known. Former Senator and Elder Pat Dodson said hers was a strong voice, and her intelligent navigation for First Nations people's rightful place in a resistant society resulted in many of the privileges we enjoy today. And from Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, Dr. O'Donoghue walked tall, and her example and inspiration made us all walk taller. A remarkable life to be honoured by the South Australian Government.
There will be an offer of a state funeral to a family.
An appropriate celebration of the life of a First Nations pioneer. Anthony
Albanese says he's an honest person as he defends a broken promise and sells his tax cut changes to the public and to the Parliament. Federal Parliament returns this week with the tax cuts on top of the agenda. The Greens want more changes and some in the coalition want no change at all. But the government is confident voters are on side. Here's political reporter Tom Lowry.
Questions of character.
I'm asking whether your word is still your bond.
David, I'm an honest person.
As the Prime Minister sells a tax turnaround.
Low and middle income Australians are under pressure. What I can't do as Prime Minister of Australia is to wring my hands and say, if only there was something I could do about it.
Internal polling is telling Labor the public broadly likes its Stage 3 tax changes. The question is what voters make of a broken promise.
Circumstances have changed. And what we've done is respond to the changed economic circumstances.
Labor still hasn't fixed the unfairness in the Stage 3 tax cuts.
But first, the government has to convince the Greens or the coalition.
We'll be fighting for more for low and middle income earners when this comes to Parliament.
The bill will land in Parliament on Wednesday, but has been made public today, ahead of party room meetings tomorrow and Tuesday. Some in coalition ranks want to take a stand.
We should stick with what Australians have been promised, what the Labor Party voted for, what the Liberal Party voted for, what the Australian people voted for, which were the Stage 3 tax cuts.
Others sounding more open-minded.
We'll be pragmatic, we'll discuss the details of that, but we want to put as much back in people's pockets as we can.
Peter Dutton has already dropped hints the coalition won't look to block this legislation. It may opt to vote these changes through and take its own tweaks to the next election. The government is confident it's starting the parliamentary year on the right note, and it hopes that might carry through to a looming by-election. Tom Lowry, ABC News, Canberra.
One person has been arrested after violent protests broke out at Melbourne's annual Pride March. Police were surrounded by about 50 people who threw paint and blocked officers from marching, leading the Chief Commissioner to label the protesters an ugly rabble.
A march for diversity took a violent turn. Police say they were forced to take action after demonstrators threw paint bombs and blocked the path of members taking part in the march.
They may call themselves protesters, but it was an ugly rabble, a group who came there obviously with intent to confront and, if not to attack police, to threaten them.
One person was arrested for allegedly assaulting a spectator.
Protest by all means, but not in the way we saw today.
For the majority, it was a day to celebrate as thousands braved the summer heat in St Kilda.
When we grew up, we were very closeted, so you couldn't be out at work, you couldn't be out anywhere, and now you see kids at school getting the support that they need, and it's really open. As temperatures rose, the shade became a refuge for those watching on.
I'm so happy to be back at Pride. I haven't been here since 2019, and my girlfriend from Canada is here, so why not? Yeah.
For others trying to escape the hottest day so far this summer, there weren't many options.
Sit in the shade or come to the beach.
Cabanas crowded the sand as temperatures climbed into the high 30s in Melbourne. Plenty took to the water. It was too much of a good thing for some, needing a little help from local surf rescue. On the surf coast, not even an algal bloom at Torquay could keep people away.
We'll be wary of it, but it's not going to stop us from going into the beautiful waves.
In other parts of regional Victoria, people did what they could to keep cool, with parts of the Wimmera and Mallee topping 40 degrees.
Go swimming, get outside, find something cool to do, or stay inside, get out the aircon.
Horsham ice cream shops were doing a roaring trade, while others were finding refuge wherever they could.
We're not escaping the heat, we're actually out and amongst it.
There's some respite with a change coming through overnight. Rachel Clayton, ABC News, Melbourne.
4 motorcyclists have been killed in separate crashes on Victoria's roads this weekend, with 2 fatalities in Melbourne overnight. The latest crash happened in Melton, in Melbourne's outer west, just after midnight, involving a car and motorcyclist. The male rider died at the scene. Hours earlier, another motorcyclist was killed in a crash also involving a car in Bentley East. In both cases, the driver stopped at the scene. It follows the deaths of 2 riders yesterday in the state's northwest and Melbourne's north. In a second day of major attacks in the Middle East, the US and Britain have launched dozens of strikes on Iran-linked targets in Yemen. The Pentagon hit Houthi rebel groups, saying weapons facilities and missile systems that have been used to attack ships in the Red Sea were destroyed. The strikes had the support of Australia, alongside other countries like Bahrain, Canada and New Zealand. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese joined Britain in saying the attacks are not an escalation, but the Houthis have promised to retaliate.
British and US forces strike 36 Houthi targets in Yemen. It's the second day of US-led operations retaliating against the deadly attack by Iran-backed militias on American troops last week. British warplanes leaving from Cyprus, US aircraft carriers deployed to the region, flying high-stakes missions and firing cruise missiles.
Both stations.
And bomber units from Texas, whose commander says they can engage in any operation anywhere on the globe. The strikes have the support of several countries, including Australia, which officials said included intelligence and assistance with logistics.
We want to see the area settle down. We're working with our allies to play a role there.
These are the Houthi fighters they're trying to stop. The Allied strikes hit deeply buried weapons storage facilities as well as missile and air defence systems the Iran-backed militia are using against international ships in the Red Sea. Before the strikes, the militants released this video of training, attacking cars and practicing kidnapping of people pretending to be foreign soldiers.
Iran's proxies have played with fire for months and years, and it's now burning them.
The US insists the latest attacks are part of an existing operation to degrade the capabilities of the Houthis. But as hostilities intensify, it's clear what's actually happening here in the Middle East. This is an escalating war between the US and the tentacles of Iran. John Lyons, ABC News, Jerusalem.
But for the people of Yemen, conflict is not new. Nearly a decade of civil war has already devastated much of the nation, plunging it into what the United Nations calls the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Yemenis now fear another war looms.
For most of his life, Fuad El-Jadi has walked to class each morning, knowing he may not return home.
My school was shelled, and I had to stop going for a while. As a child, I was afraid our house would be hit. I was constantly in fear.
After nearly a decade of civil war in Yemen, fighting between Houthi rebels and government forces was put on hold in 2022 in a UN-brokered truce. That truce has held longer than expected, allowing 13-year-old Fuad to focus on what matters.
We have big dreams. We want to become doctors and engineers.
Now his country faces another war against a powerful enemy threatening to undo the fragile peace. American airstrikes on Houthi rebel targets in Yemen have drawn Washington and some Western allies, including Australia, into an expanding conflict in the Middle East. Residents now worry a dark new chapter is beginning. Locals are stockpiling fuel in anticipation of a war with the West, while business owners are bracing for further economic decline.
The news is bad and a war is looming. We worry we'll be forced to shut the factory.
In Shima Ibrahim's chocolate shop, years of conflict forced her to let go of staff, while black market supplies have become unaffordable.
We faced the last war bravely, then we're ready for a tough new war.
For the generation that's known nothing but, surviving is the only option.
Even if there was another war on Yemen, we will not surrender. I will carry on.
Tom Joyner, ABC News.
Back home, and the federal government is finally set to introduce rules requiring car companies to supply more fuel-efficient new vehicles to Australia. Australia's been an outlier on introducing standards, lagging well behind countries including China, the US and New Zealand.
These shiny new electric cars are getting ready to hit the streets, and the government wants more Australians to get behind the wheel.
85% of cars sold around the world are sold under fuel efficiency standards, and it's way beyond time that Australia catches up.
New rules would require car companies to supply more fuel-efficient vehicles, with targets set on the average emissions per kilometre for new cars sold, with fines for non-compliance. The government says it would lead to savings of up to $1,000 every year in fuel costs.
Australians are paying more at the bowser than they should compared to people in other countries because they're using more petrol and diesel.
Car companies have been very clear to us that the latest and best vehicles that they create are often not brought to Australia at all or are brought here years later, specifically because we haven't had these standards in place.
The US has had emissions standards since the 1970s, but change in Australia has been a long time coming.
We are going to stand by our tradies and we are going to save their utes.
The opposition says fuel efficiency standards could make some vehicles unaffordable.
We are going to hear all sorts of nonsense from the opposition, from a range of other stakeholders about this. We're going to hear that, utes are banned. That is not true.
The peak body for car manufacturers says current technology is limited.
And my greatest concern without doing the analysis is around utes, especially 4x4 utes and large SUVs.
The Climate Council says Australia has a long way to go to catch up with the rest of the world.
It would be great to have had it done, 20 years ago, but here we are, and it's good to have it done now.
But even with legislation going through Parliament this year, the changes would not come into effect until 2025. Sasha Payne, ABC News.
In what has been described as a cowardly and violent crime, a 70-year-old woman has been fatally stabbed at an Ipswich shopping centre west of Brisbane in front of her 6-year-old granddaughter. Queensland Police have launched a manhunt.
A community reeling in shock. 70-year-old Vilene White had just finished shopping at this centre in Redbank Plains when she was stabbed in the chest in front of her 6-year-old granddaughter.
It's abhorrent, it's violent, and it is a cowardly crime like I have not seen in my time as a detective.
A local doctor heard the young girl scream and rushed to the older woman's help.
I followed her there and I saw the lady in a pool of blood. She wasn't responsive, so I called 000.
Despite attempts at CPR, she died at the scene. It's rocked the community.
I've got the twins here and my other son. I'm feeling like it could easily happen to my kids as well as me and my family.
The Ipswich mayor says it's the most violent thing she's seen in her time in office.
We really do need this particular person to be identified. They need to be caught and they need to be locked up for the rest of their lives.
Mrs. White's car was stolen and ditched half an hour later. Police found it in nearby Springfield Lakes this morning. CCTV shows 4 males leaving the car.
It doesn't matter where they are, we will locate these offenders or offender and we will hold them accountable.
Detectives believe only one of the men committed the attack. Police say senior officers were taken aback by the level of violence in the attack. They're reviewing the footage and interviewing witnesses, hoping to track down the offender.
It is an abhorrent crime, a terribly violent crime.
How do we get to the point in Queensland where a visit to the shops can cost you your life?
Officers are urging anybody who witnessed the incident or who may have seen the car last night to contact them. Jay Bowman, ABC News, Ipswich.
Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan and his wife Bushra have been sentenced to 7 years in prison after a court ruled their 2018 marriage broke the law. It's the third ruling against the former cricket star this week, and just days before national elections that he's banned from contesting.
He's the cricket great turned popular Prime Minister who's already in jail, and now Imran Khan's marriage has landed him and his wife a further 7 years behind bars. A Pakistan court ruled Bushra Khan did not complete the waiting period mandated by Islam after divorcing her previous husband before marrying Imran Khan 5 years ago.
We were not allowed to produce our own evidence in our defence, and that is absolutely violation of the fundamental rights that were guaranteed by the Constitution.
This latest ruling is on top of a 14-year sentence for the couple, handed down a few days ago for illegally selling state gifts, and an extra 10 years for Imran Khan for leaking state secrets. Supporters say the charges are trumped up to stop Imran Khan from ever running for office again.
These all are political motivated cases just to sabotage the elections of 8 February.
Thursday's national elections are being hotly contested, with the son of former Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto vying for the top job, as well as another former leader, Nawaz Sharif, who has served jail time for corruption. Imran Khan's party, the PTI, is now forced to field its candidates as independents.
For the first time in the history of Pakistan, the entire leadership of a political party is currently either in jail or hiding.
The Khans have both denied any wrongdoing. The next step, a High Court appeal. Meghna Bali, ABC News.
Northern Ireland has elected a nationalist leader for the first time in its 103-year history. Michelle O'Neill is from Sinn Féin, a party which advocates for a united Ireland and was once a political arm of the Irish Republican Army during the Troubles. The 47-year-old pledged to represent both nationalists and unionists equally. Back home, an Aboriginal family claims a major insurer slugged their pensioner father with excessive premiums for his asbestos cottage in outback Western Australia. The last annual bill 88-year-old Leonard O'Meara paid before he died was $10,000, despite the property being worth very little. There are calls for an investigation into whether he was overcharged, as rising insurance costs push more Australians into financial stress. National Consumer Affairs reporter Michelle Atkin has this special report, which uses Mr O'Meara's name and image with the permission of his family.
Leonard O'Meara's home in Derby in WA's Kimberley region is modest but full of heart and history.
Mum and Dad were so proud. They were probably the first Aboriginal people in town to buy their own house. Look at this photo here of Mum and Dad in the wedding. Oh, that's beautiful, eh?
In 2009, the pensioner was sold a home insurance policy when he visited the local branch of ANZ Bank. The policy was underwritten by QBE and initially an ANZ subsidiary.
Insurance was just a natural part of home ownership, and he paid his premiums every year. Dad's bedroom.
His daughters discovered just how much when the 88-year-old asked for help. His premium had jumped to $9,500, more than double the average for northwestern Australia.
All has to be redone. I actually thought it was a mistake. And when I saw that, I was absolutely gobsmacked. I couldn't believe it.
Over more than a decade, the Jaru man diligently paid $54,000. Since 2016, the policy's cost almost quadrupled.
So this veranda here, has all popped up.
How are you, Maureen? Financial counsellor Alan Gray is helping the family seek a refund and compensation.
Thank you.
Mr Gray has obtained an alternative quote with another insurer for $2,850 a year.
And you know, the funny thing is...
He questions if his client was charged excessive premiums, known as a loyalty tax, as a long-term customer who wasn't shopping around.
This would be the worst insurance rip-off I've ever encountered. I'm absolutely certain that Leonard paid a loyalty tax to QBE.
Mr Gray recorded this short video with Leonard O'Meara last September, shortly before his death. He claims the bank pressured him to take out the insurance.
They stated that I had to pay that insurance. Well, I didn't want to argue with it because the house was very important to me, so I paid it.
His family is demanding answers about why the insurance policy was so expensive when the house is worth so little. A recent valuation estimated it was worth no more than $175,000, mainly for the land.
How do they charge an aged pensioner this amount of premiums for a home that we don't even know the value of?
QBE denies it ripped off Mr O'Meara, saying his premiums reflected the risks and benefits of the policy, which was for full replacement, and that rebuilding would be more expensive to meet current standards. ANZ would not comment on Leonard's case, but insists it gives clear advice to customers about insurance products, taking into account their financial situations.
Leonard's experience points to a concerning national trend. Rising premiums are pushing more households to go uninsured or into financial stress as they struggle to afford cover.
1 in 8 households in Australia face insurance premiums that is more than a month of their income. That's about 1.24 million households.
Actuary Sharanjit Padam says you can save as much as 50% by shopping around.
There is likely to be a better deal out there for you.
How much will that...
Alan Gray and the family are calling on corporate regulator ASIC to investigate. While the recent loss of Leonard O'Meara remains raw, his family is determined to pursue his alleged mistreatment.
I think they took advantage of my dad because of his age, his vulnerability, his loyalty. We feel so grieved and so hurt by what they've done to Dad that we're definitely going to continue this fight with them.
Let's get to some sport. And an excellent half-century from number 8 batter Sean Abbott has saved Australia from a low total in the second one-day international against the West Indies at the SCG. The hosts struggled on a slow wicket, falling to 6 for 142 in the 29th over before Abbott came to the crease. He and debutant Will Sutherland put on 57 for the 8th wicket, with Abbott eventually falling for 69 off 63 deliveries, as Australia made 258 from its 50 overs. Godakesh Moati was the pick of the bowlers, claiming 3 for 28 from his 10 overs. The Australian women's team will be looking to continue its winning form in one-day cricket when it meets South Africa again in Canberra on Wednesday. Megan Shute took 1 for 1 off 5 overs in her 200th international as Australia thrashed the tourists in the first ODI game in Adelaide. An unbeaten 52 from Beth Mooney ensured that the home team reached the victory target of 106 with more than 30 overs to spare. A world-first sporting armour designed for women is set to be a game-changer for female contact sports. As women's participation in sports soars, it's hoped the purpose-built guard will prolong careers and minimise injuries.
From bone-crunching tackles to hard hits, there's no holding back in these contact sports.
Oh, going in hard.
Wow. But soon these women could have extra reason to feel safe when they step out on the pitch.
It's going to be a game changer, not just here in Australia, but worldwide.
Be able to adjust to your body shapes.
The light bulb moment for a female-specific sporting armour came while working with Bond University.
So they approached me and said, could you make something for our rugby female team?
Marie Doherty plays prop, one of rugby's most brutal positions, and says she'll feel hits for days and weeks after games.
We've definitely all woken up feeling like that. We've even felt like that an hour after the game, where we just think this might be the last game I play.
Protective gear is often designed for men and then scaled or resized to fit women.
Whatever is on the market doesn't fit, it's not comfortable. They have to adjust constantly of what they are wearing. They get distracted.
But this yet-to-be-named prototype uses impact absorption materials to protect the most vulnerable areas of the female body.
The air molecules in our product will absorb the energy and then pushing it back out, just like an airbag in the car.
If we can protect anything about our bodies playing any sport, it'll definitely prolong our careers in the sport that we love.
The armour is being designed to be versatile for most contact sports and will be released in July. Bond University plans to then run a clinical trial.
With that data, then we want to go to World Rugby and then bring a standard into the game, just like the mouth guards, where it is now mandatory for them to wear mouth guards.
Jessica Stewart, ABC News.
To the weather. Overnight temperatures were around average. The lowest of 9 was felt at Strathbogie, Castlemaine, Pound Creek and Omeo. We had early fog this morning in the southwest, then a dry, hot and sunny day with wind gusts recorded of up to 60 to 70 kilometres per hour at several places. Maximum temperatures were 5 to 10 degrees above average. The state's top of 43 was at Oyen. In Melbourne, the temperature reached 38 degrees this afternoon. Interstate today, it was mostly cloudy in Sydney and Brisbane. Hobart had rain, mostly sunny in Perth and Darwin, and hot and sunny in Adelaide. The satellite picture is showing convective cloud extending from central NT to northwest New South Wales, upper level cloud streaming southwards from the NT into northeastern South Australia. A high is directing a hot northerly flow over the state. A trough in the southwest will move north and eastwards this evening and will reach the Mallee by midnight. A low will generate rain, showers and storms over New South Wales, Victoria, eastern South Australia and eastern Tasmania. For the capital cities, partly cloudy in Brisbane, Adelaide and Hobart, showers for Sydney and sunny in Perth and Darwin. Back home, much cooler. Some isolated light showers over the southwest and central districts in the morning, 30 in Echuca. And there'll also be some early morning showers and thunderstorms in the northeast, extending into the remaining northern and eastern districts in the early afternoon. Storms and showers tending to rain at times across the eastern ranges and northeast, 31 in Shepparton. On the bay, 10 to 15 knot west to southwesterly winds will turn southerly and increase up to 20 knots during the morning, waves around 1 metre. Now, the Bureau has issued a strong wind warning for the central Gippsland coast and east Gippsland coast. For Melbourne, it'll be cloudy tomorrow with a chance of a shower in the morning ahead of the afternoon, and a top of 23 down to 19 tonight, an overnight low of 17 in Geelong. And looking ahead for Melbourne, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, partly cloudy 21, 22 and 23. Friday, cloudy and 22. Saturday, partly cloudy 22. And next Sunday, sunny and 30. And that's it for this evening's bulletin. Thanks for everything. From the news team now, good night. Stay well.